When I found this recipe, I was like, where have you been all my life? Creamy chicken and kale tortellini soup. That name might be quite a mouthful, but it perfectly describes this yummy mouthful. Each day during the month of February, I will be using the $4.99 Costco rotisserie chicken as a springboard for a wide variety of easy, inexpensive, delicious meals that are generally very healthy. Tune in every day this month for a new recipe. Here are the ingredients for the creamy chicken and kale tortellini soup. This recipe comes from foods.com. I am making half a recipe. The recipe online is for 4 to 6, so this will serve 2 to 3, which is the size. Since I'm cooking every night this month, I don't want leftovers. I want to get through everything. So here's what we have. We have a half an onion, a stalk of celery, the equivalent of 1.5 carrots. Since I have baby carrots, I'm by gosh and by golly. We'll be making a little bit of a cream sauce here, I suppose you'd call it, a little roux. What the recipe calls for a half teaspoon of olive oil, a tablespoon of flour. We'll be making it with our homemade chicken broth. Here is our chopped kale, roughly chopped with the tough stem removed. There are 9 ounces of frozen tortellini. The recipe calls for half and half, but of course I'm just going to use heavy cream and use half cream and half milk. And a cup of chicken. I'll chop that in a little bit. So now, let's get cooking. Oh, the other interesting thing about this recipe is it was actually developed for rotisserie chicken. I didn't have to adapt a thing. I've only done one thing differently. Instead of using olive oil, I am using my chicken fat to saute my vegetables. And once you freeze it or even refrigerate the chicken broth, the fat will rise to the top and it'll be super easy to take it off. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to throw in my onions, celery, and carrots, and I will saute that until the onions are translucent. So my onions are looking translucent. Seemed a little dry, so I added just a little bit of chicken broth. I'm going to add my tablespoon of flour. Stir that in. Cook that for about a minute so that I don't have raw flour. And I can make sure I don't have any lumps or anything in there. And once that's passed, I'm going to add 3 of my 4 cups of chicken broth. And I'm reserving that last cup till the end. That's what her directions were. You know, you add it so that it's the right consistency for your soup. So I'll do that. Yeah, that's about a cup left. Now bring that to a boil. Let my vegetables get tender. We're boiling at this point, so I'm going to add in kind of a hefty cup of chopped chicken, my 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder, my 9 ounces of tortellini. And I'm going to put the lid on that. Maybe I'll stir that garlic in. You know something else I'm going to do right now? My chicken broth, be sure to check out my video on homemade chicken broth. world's best chicken broth. I'll have that linked in the description below along with the recipe for the tortellini soup. But I'm also going to add some salt because my chicken broth is unsalted. So we'll get a little salt in there now, and when everything gets to be done, I'll check it again and salt to taste. Just a little bit in there now. I'll put a lid on that, cook that for 10 or 15 minutes. Sadly, I forgot to turn my camera on. My tortellini is done. I added the other cup of my chicken broth, and I put my kale in here. And this is half a bunch of kale. Kale is a cold weather vegetable, so if you buy a bunch of kale at the grocery store in the summertime, it'll be a scrawny little pathetic thing. If you buy it in the wintertime, they're very, very generous. So this is like the world's biggest half a bunch. And as I'm stirring it here, I think I'm going to add the rest of my chicken broth. Here's Kirby. Kirby says, I smell this stuff. I have to come. It is dinner time for me. No, it's not, Kirby. So now you're going to hear little kitty squeaks. Anyway, I had an equivalent of about a cup left. So I'm going to add that extra cup in there. To make it a little soupier for me. And I'm going to add a little fresh ground pepper, and we're going to cook that until the kale is wilted, and then we can add the cream. Whoa, steamy hot soup. I'm really glad I added that extra cup of broth, and my kale is all wilted. This is a terrific one-pot meal. There's my half milk, half cream. That's a quarter cup. And now you see why it's called creamy chicken. So there it is. Here it is, all served up, steaming hot. You notice there's something on the table here. White wine vinegar. Daniel is joining us, and so this has made 3 perfect, nice full bowls. I'm really glad I added that extra cup of chicken broth, or I'd be a little shy in the broth department. I mentioned the vinegar, but I forgot to tell you, we put white wine vinegar on it. Daniel really likes the vinegar on it. He puts about 2 tablespoons. Me, I put about a teaspoon on mine, but it really does add a nice kick to it. But this is the creamy chicken, kale, and tortellini soup. Protein, a carbohydrate, lots of delicious vegetables. Perfect meal, one-pot meal for a cool day. Thanks for joining us. See you soon.